Hey friends, today I want to spend my reflection focusing on social media. I was thinking about writing something about this topic for the Pastor's Pen and the Barnabas in the coming week or two, and it kind of struck me. I really feel like I need like 5 or 10 minutes of just explaining this. Would be better than writing something down. And then it struck me I have a platform to talk for 5 or 10 minutes about something that's on my mind related to church. So here we go. Back in December, the session and elders and deacons had their officer retreat. And one of the things that came up at that retreat was something I've heard a lot about in a lot of church settings, right? How do we use social media? And in some cases, the suggestion kind of being that it would be a platform where we could, invite more visitors to come in, where we could advertise for our events. And as is the case where I think with a lot of organizations, there's a lot of ideas about what social media is, what it could be, what it could be used for our church. And to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of confusion about the role that social media can play or should play in our overall kind of community life together, especially communications, which is something that the membership committee I know focuses a lot on. So I have a few thoughts I'd like to share and would also value your feedback because, like I said, it's a conversation that's ongoing and is most definitely not something that the staff alone want to be taking responsibility for. So I share my thoughts to you with that in mind. The first thing I think that's important to say is that social media probably shouldn't just be viewed as a replacement or an upgrade of a communications device, right? There's not a lot of people that read our newsletter. People don't necessarily read bulletin boards that are around the church. What's the media by which we can best get people to pay attention to what events are coming up and sharing, success stories and that sort of thing. Let's put it on Facebook. Let's put it on Instagram. And if we put it there, people will pay more attention to it. And studies have come out and pretty definitively shown that even though those are definitely newer ways of communicating information, that even younger generations and older generations alike have become pretty adept at tuning out what they consider to be, filler, I guess maybe, junk mail, that if it's a sort of information that they would ignore in an email, if it's the sort of thing that they wouldn't read in its entirety if it arrived in their house in a letter, if that's the sort of thing that you're communicating, people are going to treat that information the same way no matter what the platform is, right? So just because you put it in front of their face on Instagram doesn't mean they're going to sign up for the event, right? If they're not going to sign up, if they're not going to do the RSVP for your event on Realm or on your email, they're still not going to do it on Facebook or Instagram, right? It doesn't change people's relationship with the information itself. So we need to be realistic about the power that social media has to, I think in some cases we think of it as, this is going to be the thing that changes people's non-responsiveness to what we send them. Studies really show that that's not actually the case. The second thing that I think is important that social media offers that's a benefit is the social part of it, right? Is that when we post something on Facebook, if we post it to Instagram, people have the ability to interact with it, right? That they can post comments, they can share it themselves. And that gives us access to people in a way that an email would not, right? That if someone interacts with an email, the reply would most likely be just to one person, and you can have a conversation with that one person. But that if several people post responses to a Facebook post, they can share that with others. Other people can see those responses, and then we as a church have an opportunity to engage with them in a way that we wouldn't have before, right? We as a church can respond to their comments. We can follow up and have follow-up conversations, invite them to participate in other conversations or in in-person events. Of course, once we get back to doing in-person events. So that would be true for all sorts of platforms, right? That's true actually of Realm as a membership database. But that is definitely one of the gifts that social media offers that, for example, our road sign, on Beltline does not offer. And so the third thing I think that's important to note is that the goal then for social media really shouldn't be advertisement or promotion so much as it is inviting people into a story, right? Or storytelling might be another way to do that. That's another thing we talked about at that retreat, right? How do we tell our story as St. Barnabas Presbyterian Church in fuller ways, right? If someone were to walk through our doors on a Sunday morning for in-person worship, once we get back to doing that, we can tell them our story fairly easily. They'll learn a lot by watching our worship service. There's announcements during the service. There's information that's in the narthex that's available to them. There's lots of friendly people who will introduce themselves and demonstrate what our culture is at the church, and can answer questions that they might have. But of course, the challenge then is that requires someone to come in and walk into the doors on a Sunday morning to have that story told to them. And so that's really what media offers, right? Is the chance to share who we are in ways that are compelling. And it's not to glorify ourselves beyond what it's not to play ourselves up. It's certainly not to lie or to exaggerate who we are or what we do, right? One of the things that I know is universally agreed upon in terms of generational theories is that younger generations, millennials especially, value authenticity above almost anything else when it comes to the relationships they build. And so if you are telling a story about yourself as an organization, any organization, but especially a church, that they suspect to be fabricated, or that you think, or they feel like you're selling them a bill of goods, right? That's immediately almost disqualifying, right? I have no interest in being part of a group of people who's going to lie to me about who they are. Tell me who you are. Be truthful, and I'll pay attention. That was the conversation the membership committee had a few months ago. And one of the responses to that is we as a church have started an Instagram page, and we've rededicated ourselves to trying to tell our story in new ways, and to use media in a way that's maybe more efficient at doing so. The pandemic has thrown a wrench into that, because in a lot of cases, telling our story means kind of highlighting the things that we're doing on a week-to-week basis. And of course, so much of that has changed. It's hard to tell people, hey, we're doing this, because this very, very easily could change by the time the post is listed. So we're navigating that particular challenge now. But I hope you'll pay attention in the coming months to the sorts of storytelling that we do. Some of that's going to be from staff. Certainly some of that is going to be from members of the membership committee and our elders and our deacons. But the thing that I believe very sincerely is that St. Barnabas has a really compelling story to tell. that it is a community of faith that has a really, really incredible dynamic of hospitality and of warmness in the community. That authenticity certainly would be a word that defines the people of the congregation. That the mission work we do is meaningful and impactful in our community. Thinking about the health fair and I guess on normal years the garage sale and all sorts of other stuff that's going on. The Boys and Girls Club being in our building. The Richardson Interfaith Alliance that we're a part of, the ways that our choirs lead worship, in the way that our fellowship and Sunday school classes learn with one another. There's a lot of story to tell. And I think once we, really hone in on telling that story, it's going to become evident through those stories what sort of community St. Barnabas is. I think that's something I can say with a lot of confidence. And I won't say that we're not going to, maybe have a flub or two in terms of how we use the new media to tell that story. We've actually already focused also on even things like radio advertisements and print advertisements too. So we're not limiting ourselves to social media per se. But as a whole, we think that that is a way forward for our community of faith. And it's important to note that we don't do that for our own sake, right? We're not doing it as an institutional preserver. We do it because of what our mission is, right? That we are a community of faith that seeks to live out our belief in Jesus Christ as faithfully as we know how. And that in doing so, we have important things that come from that. That we are loving one another, and we are loving God by doing the things we do. And that's good news. And if there's anything we as the church are called to do, it's to share good news with others. So give us your thoughts. Share those if they come to mind, and I look forward to hearing your feedback as the storytelling continues in the coming months. Take good care, friends.